Late Night Health continues. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. We're going to spend some time with host, actor, comedian Gary Allan. We're going to talk a little bit about his humor. We're also going to talk about taking care of your aging parents, because more and more people do that today, and they have to do it. We're going to start by talking about funny stuff. Gary Allan, welcome to Late Night Health with Mark Allan.
Mark, thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience today.
Gary is also part of the WMEL family in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Yes, very proud of that.
And I believe you're the one who puts us up on the WMEL family network.
Yes, I'm one of the producers as well as a talk show host, and I'm very proud of my association with WMEL 1510. With Mr. John Harper, who I've known since our early days in college together.
Wow, and I've known John for, let's say, 35 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're all three of us from South Florida, so it's kind of nice to.
I'm not from South Florida.
Oh, I thought you were.
No, I met him when I tried to get a job when he was in Detroit, and I kept pestering the crap out of him.
Oh, well.
And he kept trying to hire me, I have to tell you. And then he did hire me, and then the job fell through. Neither one of us got it. But,
well. Well, this business, it's like that. One day you're on top of the world, as Sinatra would say, and the next day you're looking up going, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. But as long as you're on top of the ground, that's okay.
Yeah.
Gary has a varied career. He's a Vietnam vet. He's spent time in communications. He's a comedian. How long were you in Las Vegas doing Jay Leno?
About 10 years, but I also opened for other people as well, traveled on the road with them for years. I also did the game show hosting for Game Show America, run by a very, very dear friend of mine, Matthew King. I was on the road for quite a while, doing things for other people, but I had this canny look that looks just like Jay, and I've known Jay for many, many years. And when I lived in Los Angeles, we'd talk. He and I would get together and talk, and we were friends. And matter of fact, on my show this past week, I had Randy West on, and I've known Randy for years, and we used to go over to Jay's garage over there in beautiful downtown Burbank.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I was in Vegas for about 10 years, and then finally the bottom fell out, as you well know, back in 08 and 09. And I decided I wanted to get out and come back to Florida, and it's worked out pretty well for me because John's been using me ever since I got here, and it's a great opportunity for me to get back into my roots, which is broadcasting.
We should mention that Gary was a regular on Hill Street Blues and St. Elsewhere as well.
Well, I was what they used to call a 5 and under guy. I had 5 lines or less, or I could have been an extra. But yes, I mean, I was sort of I wasn't a regular that you saw my name or my picture, but yeah, I was there, and I learned so much doing that show and doing St. Elsewhere. I learned a great deal from wonderful actors and people that I grew to admire and got to know and became friends of when I left there for many, many years.
Well, as life goes on, all of a sudden, your parents need some help.
Yes.
Right.
I'm living in Chicago, Illinois at the time, and I'm working on a political campaign. I had moved from Los Angeles to Chicago to get a job in the advertising world. My ex-wife was an advertising executive for J. Walter Thompson, and I went back to school while I was living in Los Angeles and studied and became a copywriter and moved back to Chicago. And in the latter stages of the campaign, it became apparent my mother was getting sicker and sicker. And then finally she called me up one day after the campaign was over, and my boss had lost his bid to be governor of Illinois, Neil Hartigan, great gentleman. She called up and asked what was I up to, which is very rare for her to call. And I said, well, I'm thinking about going to work with a bunch of guys down for this guy who's going to run for president down in Arkansas. And so she said, well, would you consider coming home? You're one of only 2 that can do this. And I said, what's wrong? And she told me she was the cancer was spreading quickly, which, by the way, let me just emphasize or say this, that all the way through high school and everything else, I always expected a phone call that your mother was gone from cancer. She had beaten it twice before.
Wow.
When I was in high school, she was on chemotherapy, and she got tired of the misery that it brought to her life, in a sense, even though it was supposed to be helping her. And she stopped doing it. The doctors all warned her she would die. That was in 67, 68. She didn't pass away until 93. So she even outlived the doctors that warned her if she stopped taking chemotherapy. Now, what happened to my mother was extraordinary. My mother was a wonderful, extraordinary, full of life and full of fight in her life, and the Lord was very much part of her world. And I wish I could say it was in mine for most of my life, but it wasn't. But I went home. She told me that, I said, well, my last day is January 16th, 91. I said, I will be home within 3 or 4 days after that, and I was. My wife and I were divorcing at the time anyway, and I said, I'm going to go home to Florida, go down to Miami, and maybe get back into radio, take care of my folks, and start rebuilding my life and my career. Didn't quite work out that way. 10 years later, I'm still there taking care of my dad until he passed away in 1999.
What was your motivation? First of all, do you have siblings?
Yes, I have a number of them. I have 9.
Oh,
yeah, we're not a Mormon family, but we are Catholic.
Okay, gotcha. And of all the brothers and sisters, you were the one who
I was the one that could do it. I was the one that my mother and I shared an interesting bond, Mark. She was an adopted child, and so was I. So we
9
had
kids,
a bond
and they adopted you
from the very beginning that none of the others could share with her. She loved us all, but I had a special bond with her based on that alone. And my feelings were that was my mother and father. When I was living in Pennsylvania, and my aunt and uncle, who I was being raised by at the time because my parents were going through some difficult times, passed away. My mother had just had a cancer operation. She flew on an airplane to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, and came and got me and took me in. My father, we did not always get along. My father and I didn't get along for the last few years of his life. I loved him, though. My
and
motivation
he loved
was
you.
This was my responsibility to go home and take care of them. Whatever happens to my life will happen, but I need to go home and do this for them, for what they had done for me all my life.
Our guest is Gary Allen. He's a host of GaryAllenTalkShow.com. He's a comedian. We'll get some jokes in here, I'm sure, or at least some voices in a little bit. We'll also, we're talking about taking care of our parents. Was it an obligation or an honor for you?
It was an honor. I never felt obligated that I had to go home and take care of them. I could have easily said no. A lot of my friends said, "Are you crazy? You need to get on with your life." And I said, no, I need to get on and take care of my responsibilities, to take care of my parents. Now, I had my mother for 2 years before she finally passed away. My only regret is that the night that she passed, I had just left the hospital to go home and feed my dad, and I wasn't there at the moment that she passed. But she and I both had made peace with one another, and I had made her a promise that I would take care of my dad no matter what until either I was unable to or he passed away, but I would make sure that he was taken care of. And I never felt obligated to do it. It was my honor and my privilege to take care of 2 people who raised me and loved me. And believe me, I don't regret it for a minute. Financially, I was a disaster, and my Social Security is going to look like that, too. I don't care. I did what I needed to do for me to be right with me. If I hadn't done that, I would feel like the lowest form of humanity on earth.
In today's society, a lot of people park their aging parents. Now, some can park them in nice retirement homes. Mm-hmm. Some of them are not so nice.
No, they're not.
Were you able to take care of your parents at home, at their home?
I took care of my mother until she went into hospice. And then after that point, of course, I was unable to. I was ill-equipped to. My father, on the other hand, I was working at a radio station in Miami, and I was doing some sports down there at the time. I came home, and there was blood all over the walkway of where we lived on the front door, and I thought, oh, my God, he got mugged. No, he fell, he broke his hip, he fell, and he crawled. The ex-Marine crawled all the way about 60 yards back to our apartment. He never was right again. He never returned home after that day. We never could get the hip to hold. He was very fragile at 86 years old. And I cried like a baby the night that he passed away, or before he did. As I said earlier in the program, I didn't get along with my father 100%. We had our moments in life, but I loved him and I took care of him. I would never park my mom and dad unless it was beyond my capabilities to do it, but they were being taken care of by me until I couldn't do it anymore. But I would never park them in a home, because I've seen some of those homes, Mark, and they are brutal.
They are brutal.
Absolutely
they are
brutal.
What about having people come in to help?
There was some of that from hospice. When my mother initially started on the morphine, she was at home, but it became apparent that it was going to be difficult for that to occur. So they put her in the hospital once, then they did send her home again, but it proved not to work out very well. The cancer was just too much for her, but she was at home until she couldn't be anymore, and that was only just about 30 days before she finally passed away.
And of course, I mean, doing things like changing diapers and helping bathroom things and showering, those are things that are very difficult, especially for a son.
It is. When my mother became incontinent, it was hard for me. It was a role reversal, Mark. It was,
yes.
Now I'm changing her. I'm changing the sheets. I'm preparing this and doing that. Soon after she passed away, my father brooded, went into a heavy depression, major depression. I came home early one day in December from Christmas shopping. Had I not come home early, I would have lost my father that day. He brooded badly. So for the next 2 years of my life, I stopped doing everything and stayed with him to get him back on his feet, went into heavy debt on credit cards to take him to psychiatrists to find out how I could help him. And finally, I just had to let him be who he was. He survived about 6 to 7 years after her passing, but eventually God decided it was time for him to go.
Was your father religious as well?
Very religious. He did not go to church, but he was a Catholic, and believe me, he was extremely religious. He had some interesting dreams growing up that he used to tell me about, that he would immediately go to the priest and ask for forgiveness, and he was extremely religious. My mother was Jewish, the same as I, even though we're adopted, but she was born of the Jewish faith, and I was also. But we're all people of faith.
It doesn't matter what you call.
I
it doesn't matter what you call yourself. You're spiritual, right?
Yes. The Lord
right.
Jesus is my Savior, and He gives me strength every day to keep moving forward.
Gary Allen, host, actor, comedian, our guest here on Late Night Health, and you can follow him at GaryAllenTalkShow.com. We're going to have the insane Daryl Wayne's going to be on Gary's show, and possibly even me.
Yes, definitely.
Soon, right?
Absolutely.
We're going to be promoting. Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. This is Late Night Health. Join us at LateNightHealth.com. Gary and I and Daryl return as Late Night Health moves on.
Welcome to Guide to the Soul. This is Robert Clancy. Balance in life isn't about making everything equal. It's about sharing equal parts of your heart for each area of your life. Many people seem to struggle with bringing their life into balance. Family, work, and health all seem to be a challenge these days. Think of the demands you have on your own schedule and time. It can be frustrating and overwhelming. What's most important to discover is that peace is not about finding a quiet place among the chaos. Peace is about listening for the divine whispers of love amidst this turmoil. Take a breath and you will find balance.
For more inspiration from Robert Clancy, visit GuideToTheSoul.com or go to the Moments with Robert page on LateNightHealth.com.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate a lower tax bill. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will fight for you using industry secrets that can stop any IRS actions, eliminate penalties and interest, and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, call the Tax Doctor now for a free IRS audit emergency review.
800-663-5107. 800-663-5107. 800-663-5107. That's 800-663-5107.